Hey, what's going on, people? So I've recorded a lot of videos today, but it's like, what time is it now? 10:08 p.m. Eastern time, and I'm just chilling, having a bowl of cereal, watching some TV. And I got a text message from someone on Instagram earlier today, and we were just chatting a little bit. And I'm going to read you the text message. This is just a person I've never chatted with before, and he just sent me a message. He said, "What's up?" I said, "What up?" And he said the following, and I'll put it up on the screen so people like me who like reading along and not just listening, I like have subtitles on my like shows and movies that I watch just because. All right. He says, "I've watched a lot of your videos. You're like the perfect person for this question. I'm trying to find the best mobile setup possible because I travel quite a bit. I'm using Ableton Live in my studio. I'm curious about the possibilities with Koala, which I have, and the TE-OPXY, which I like and will probably get. I like TE stuff, and although Koala is nice, I feel like I'd be missing some synths that I could get from the OPXY. I'm typically making hip-hop, trap, R&B, or dance music. I'm thinking probably an iPad with Koala for chopping, time stretching, etc., and maybe sequencing, and the OPXY for sequencing and synths. I also use the TX6. I love your thoughts since you have everything." Since you have everything. Yeah, I do have everything. This is true. So I was like, appreciate it. Thanks for checking out my vids. And then I read this like at my parents' house when I was picking my kids up. And then I was like, I could just respond to it. Like this type of thing, usually I just like maybe send a voice message back. But it kind of got me thinking. I'm like, oh, this person, is talking my language, right? He uses Koala. I love Koala Sampler. He's interested in the XY. I'm doing a month-long XY deep dive, to kind of understand it and kind of not be distracted with other gear. And so I was going to send that, but then I was like, you know what? This is an XY related concept that I've already been thinking about, and I'll talk about it a little bit more specifically in a second. But I was like, let me let the guy know that I'm going to create this video. And from there, we just got to talking a little bit, and I was just kind of thinking like, hey, I want to hear some of this person's music, right? He's, the genres that he just mentioned are ones I'm interested in. So he sent me a couple links, sent me a link. I asked him to send me a couple links, sent me a link to, and if you're watching this, which of course you're watching this because you asked the question, I'll timestamp the information for the video. This, I guess, preface thing, you were living it with me. So you already know all this stuff that happened. Feel free to continue watching, but I'll timestamp where I'm talking about like the actual stuff. Anyway, listen to the first song. I was like, oh, this is dope. Sounds mad good. I like what I'm hearing. And then he sent me a few other songs. And then specifically 2 of the songs he sent me are ones that I listened to a lot back in the day. From ASAP Rocky, from his, I forget the name of the album. It's called At Long Last ASAP. Yes, because he has like kind of similar wordings for some of his albums. I got confused. So that one, Lord Pretty Flacco Jody, I think that's how it is, number 2. So he did that song. And more specifically, when he sent me Man of the Year by Schoolboy Q, and I told him, I was like, dude, I listened to that song hundreds of times back in the day. That album, Oxymoron, I listened to a lot, but that song specifically, I listened to a lot. So I was pretty hyped about that. Not like starstruck or whatever, but just like, yo, that's pretty damn wild and interesting and cool that someone who, made a song that I listened to a lot back in the day, like is asking me a question. I think it's really cool. And so I was excited. I was like, let me stop what I'm doing. Let me go record this to kind of channel this enthusiasm. And then before I started recording, I kind of asked him, one more question. I was like, is there anything else specifically that you're interested in knowing, about, like, he's looking like for mobile gear, right? Like something mobile that he can travel with because he travels a lot. And he uses Ableton on a MacBook Pro 14-inch. That's what I have, a MacBook Pro 14-inch. And we were just chatting, and I'm like, all right, this person clearly knows what the hell he's doing in Ableton. So in my mind, I'm like, going from Ableton to Koala Sampler / the OPXY, what's the for someone who knows Ableton super well, what would be the reason that I would say, oh yeah, it's a good idea to, leave your MacBook Pro at home? Because I don't think I don't think a 14-inch MacBook is like heavy or that big to travel with. In his case, he'd have that. He'd have a 14-inch MacBook Pro. We have the same Keith McMillan Keyboard C, which is an incredible MIDI controller that I covered on my channel a couple of times in the past. So you'd have those two, and the TX6 probably. I think he mentioned that, or you'd have an iPad. I don't know what size he would consider, but I have in front of me, and I'll talk about this too. I have the 12.9-inch iPad. I'm going to talk about this a lot, actually, very soon, just how it's like this year is kind of like a back to basics kind of year, right? I started making content on the iPad, specifically like the videos and obviously my music, but right now I'm diving back into video editing on the iPad, and it's just really been unbelievable. Like, I'm excited about editing and not feeling like, oh, I have to be at my computer to edit and all this stuff like I've been doing for the past year. But I digress. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, the conversation is kind of like, he understands the consensus for the XY to be that maybe it was rushed to be released, and that the sampling on it, and that's the big thing that we're going to talk about here. The OPXY, okay, I'm liking it. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun with it, all the things. Sampling on it is not good right now. It's just not good. We need sample chopping. We need some other features for a $2,300 or $2,400, whatever it is, product. It needs better sample stuff on it. Like, it needs it. So his question to me earlier today, it kind of came at a time when I was already thinking about this. That's why I'm kind of interested in chatting about this, which is that the OPXY with Koala Sampler, what are ways that, and this was his question, right? Like, can you use Koala Sampler to do your sample chopping stuff, at least in the intermediary, like at least for the time being, until updates, which we all, I think, expect, should be coming on the XY, hopefully are coming on the XY, that give you sample chops, that give you the ability to manipulate samples in, different ways, maybe better management a little bit. What else? There was one more thing I was thinking about with the samples, but maybe it'll come to me. But like, until that happens, are there ways that we can use Koala Sampler on an iPad or an iPhone and do, which in my opinion is the best, my favorite way to sample. There's nothing that I've explored that's more fun or intuitive to sample on than Koala Sampler. Not a close second, but I guess you could say a second or maybe a close second would be my time with Ableton Push 2, specifically Push, not just Ableton Simpler or whatever, but like that hardware made chopping samples very fun and intuitive and stuff. Yeah, so the question essentially is like, if we have an iPad and we have the OPXY, how can we kind of have both of these things working together? How can we sample on here and get some stuff that we're doing on here onto the OPXY? Now, I'm not going to do a full-on deep dive right now. Like, right now I just want to kind of talk about it a little bit and kind of like just brainstorm, like, how could this actually work? I believe if I go into Koala Sampler and, we load up something on here, here we go, Soul. Now, of course, I got to be careful because we don't want to be demonetized or whatever. So I got to be careful with it. But essentially, you have a loop. Say if we have a loop on here, I'm not going to play it again, but like we have this loop and it's like, oh, this is cool. We know we can time stretch on here. We also know that we can do, it's kind of like hard to kind of like think about this, but we could time stretch. We can create our pads on here with the right sample chops. We can recall or know what the BPM is that we're dealing with, that we just time stretch this to. We can record, patterns, right, in these different sections here. And then we can export all sequences or all samples. And again, we'd have to actually do this and like explore it and see how it actually works. But I believe it should work pretty decently. But the issue, and again, export all samples and then get them from here to here. But the issue is one that just arose. Trying to see where I have a. Well, I'm not even going to plug it in now because I already know what's going to happen. But the issue is like, if you're only using these two, how do we get data from an iPad into the OPXY? I believe, and I'm going to actually grab a cable real quick over here. So the person that I was just chatting with and chatting about mentioned something that I'm pretty sure. I mean, he sounded very confident with it, and I think that's the case as well. Like, just from my understanding, plugging this in, we cannot access. I don't think. If we go to COM, we go to MTP. He sounded pretty like knowledgeable on the matter, right? We can't access files from the OPXY on an iPad. That is a problem. That right there, to me, for this specific person's question, that right there eliminates this as a possibility, right? If your idea is like to do your sample chopping on here, leave my MacBook Pro at home, and get some like interest, because like it's so inspiring to chop sample. I love using Koala. I love using Koala Sampler, and I'm going to talk about very soon too. Like, as someone who's now releasing albums every season, and so just like my own, my own stuff, my own music, I might like using samples and stuff in there. I've been given thought too to like, Koala Sampler is so fun to use, and I love like just chopping samples, and like it sounds cool, it's all good, but what's the point? Where is this music going? Am I gonna release this music as on one of my albums? Am I doing it for content purposes? Am I doing it just fun? Like, what is the actual point if these things are gonna be like copywritten? Like, obviously there's other like Splice and these other companies and stuff that you could get copyright free, royalty free music, or whatever the case is. I don't even know too much about that space, but I just know, like, for me, I just have like actual copywritten songs that I cannot release because they're like popular songs or whatever, and that's typically what I would use. So I don't know, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I think for me, my recommendation for the person that I was just referring to is kind of like, yo, you can't use these two together the way that I think we would want to use them. You're going to need a computer in between, right? You need a computer. You need to connect this to a computer in order to handle file management, which is a problem. Now, if/when we get an OPXY app, for example, and we're able to, wirelessly connect maybe, and, transfer files and stuff, that would be nice. That would be cool. I would definitely like that a lot. Or if or when we get, like, I mean, come on, right? Just connecting this to a phone with USB-C or to the input and go into sample mode and be like, all right, this, like, into like drum sampler. All right, this sound is playing, and I just want to, just the same way we chop on. Oh, this thing is going crazy. Oh, probably because it's turned off. The same way we do it like on the Medieval or the KO2, like just lazy chopping, right? We need to get that on there. I've said it many times. I'm going to keep saying it, right? And I'm not going to sit here and like, I can't even recommend. Look, I pay half the money for my XY, right? And I'm, like I said, I'm enjoying it. But even for half the money, I can't sit here and say like, oh, it's worth it, because until we get proper sampling on it, even for half the price, it's not actually worth it. It's still not worth it, in my opinion, because you need that flexibility. Now, that's a little bit of that's kind of a lot to take in right there. That's so interesting how that does that. Look at that. So this camera does that up top when this goes out like that. Okay. So yeah, that's the deal. Now, just to talk about Ableton a little bit, this individual released amazing songs, as I just referenced. Let's bring this a little bit closer in real quick. Turn this into a little OPXY centric sort of thing real quick. Bring this down. So he released amazing music. He understands how to use Ableton extremely well. I would assume that, I don't know, like he's still inspired by his home base. So the only reason why at this point you would consider something like this right now, in my opinion, is if you're looking for inspiration elsewhere. Maybe yeah, I know how to use Ableton, but it's not that fun for me. I need something else. I want to explore making music in a different way or something like that. Then, yeah, this is definitely something to consider. I have the OPZ behind me over here. Let's talk about that real quick. Now, I know people don't want to probably hear it, but the OPZ, I would still to this day, for someone looking for inspiration and stuff like that. The OPZ is, I don't know. What is the OPZ? It's just an amazing piece of equipment that I love. It's my favorite sequencer. It's instant. I haven't really touched it lately, used it until, ever since this thing was released, because I'm really trying to dive in and trying to, treat this the way that I treated this when I first got this 7 years ago, 2018, 6.5, whatever, because it's like later in the year. But yeah, I'm trying to like, because I only was making music with this at the time, and that's probably part of the reason why I made such dope stuff on here, because I wasn't distracted with other stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any other questions, anybody out there watching, any other questions about the OPXY or just my thoughts on anything we talked about here today, definitely let me know in the comments below, and hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you guys on the next video. Peace.